Welcome to Tapped In, our weekly live show exploring creativity, embodiment, and life after unraveling. My name is Siobhan. We have our co host, Midori, and today's guest is Dr. Kiki. If this is your first time here with us, welcome. Get settled in. We're going to have a cozy chat between good friends that hopefully will plant some seeds for your own embodiment and creative journey.
My name is Midori. I'm an artist alchemist, and you are now tapped into the soft power frequency.
Welcome, welcome. I love the sound of that bell. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment today's shares involve Kiki, but I'm Siobhan and I'm founder of the Birth Realm if you are new here. And in addition to holding a pregnancy group with Dr. Kiki, I also am currently enrolling for the second round of the Embodied Caregivers mentorship, or what I'm calling the care immersion. It's a space for service providers, birth workers, doulas, anyone who holds space, personal or professional, to dig into their spiritual foundations and improve their self and community care and healing abilities. So applications are open now until Friday, June 16th. And if you're interested, you can book a curiosity call with me and we can explore if it's the right container for you. That's it. Thanks.
And we have Dr. Kiki in the building. So Dr. Kiernan Kiki Steiner, DMA, pronounced she, they, sia, is a Ilocano Filipinx voice alchemist, full spectrum birth justice doula, and somatic spiritual practitioner who is passionate about the intersection of vocal liberation and reproductive justice. Dr. Kiki was born, transracially adopted, and raised in Ho-Chunk Nation lands in the rolling hills of southwestern Wisconsin, which set the stage for her personal journey to find community and healing through music. Her ancestors are from the Ilocos and Central Luzon region in the Philippines, Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales, and Switzerland. In 2021, Dr. Kiki received their doctorate in choral conducting and music education from Arizona State University, where they began to develop a decolonized approach to vocal and choral teaching practices. Through all of their offerings, Dr. Kiki intuits ancestral wisdom and blends somatic spiritual practices with scientific knowledge of the voice, which they have coined, in quotes, our soul's unique frequency to regulate the nervous system, strengthen the voice/inner voice, and to activate creativity through releasing shame around the voice. Welcome, Dr. Kiki in the building. Air horns.
Y'all, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for so long, and I'm ready to get into it.
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited because some people watching may have seen us together in many different formats, but this is your first time on Tapped In, where I'm hoping we get to just learn something new. And I mean, every time we talk, there's something. We do always learn new things about one another, and that's what's really special. For those who don't know, and this is your first time seeing Dr. Kiki, we have, the three of us, been in connection for at least 2+ years, 2.5, maybe 3 for you, Midori, since 2021 spring for myself and Kiki. And we have collaborated in many different venues. We've done online events together. I was Kiki's virtual doula for her first baby, which we'll probably talk a little bit about. But it's just been a really special friendship. And in fact, you did break the fourth wall just this past weekend. Midori and Kiki finally met in person. So other than that, this has been like a truly other timeline, other plane love affair that just keeps materializing more and more on this timeline. And I think it's just really cute.
It's so good. It's just so good.
Yeah, Kiki, we met, I think maybe even more beginning or mid 2021. And yeah, you were my first voice coach, virtual voice coach. So Kiki really was a big factor in unlocking my voice and is definitely why I feel like I can speak freely now. I've spoken many times about my voice and feeling like I'm still on my journey to really reclaiming it. And Kiki's been a big part of that. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. Kiki, what are you celebrating today?
I am celebrating community care that I've been able to create and build in these different communities, like not only online. Like this weekend, I was able to meet Midori in person. I was able to bring my daughter to the House of Kapwa opening ceremony and meet many other friends that have just been virtual friendships and make them IRL. And then also to like return home this week and to have this community of care that I have here with my parents stepping in and supporting me, watching my daughter so I can be in these places and continue building, creating, imagining, and dreaming what the future could look like for our families in a really liberated way. So community of care is really what I'm grounding into and celebrating.
Siobhan, I feel like you gotta go next after that because that's literally
I'm celebrating the same.
of your life right now.
Same. Pretty much that. Yeah, I'm really celebrating that too. Celebrating witnessing all of us, just like I said, materializing these intentions that we have been really committed to for the last at least few years. And so similarly, yeah, just building more relationships. This morning I did a session trade with a massage therapist that's definitely a new friend and just really soul aligned. And I've been doing a lot of bartering locally lately, and I just am like, I'm living in the world and economy that I have been dreaming of, trading tarot readings for a haircut, trading massage for Reiki, and just being held by people who feel like I want to feel when I hold space for others. And that's just really, really it's just like, it was almost overwhelming, except I did a lot of energy work today and last night. And then last night, Jasmine held space for me as well. And I am just practicing a lot of receiving. So I'm really celebrating my relationship with receiving as a caregiver, as someone who has given a lot. That has felt really new and enlightening when I've been able to have someone reflect to me and show me what's been in my body. So yeah, I'm celebrating that and like this new relationship with my physical body too.
Yes.
Yes, receive.
The best massage in my life. Shout out if you're in the Bay Area, Ashley Dawn of Dawn's Healing Hands. She's a travel massage therapist and she's the one, y'all. I'll tag her later.
Dang, I definitely follow her on Instagram.
So good.
Dang.
Wow.
I need to be touched soon.
Yeah, like the feeling safe to be touched by someone new and not in a romantic or sexual way is a new it's newer right now for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's different to have someone touch you who you know that's like part of their purpose versus capitalism where you go to a massage parlor and then just like you're kind of like a piece of meat.
Totally. I said that to her after. I was like, I think that's the first time, like normally when I go to massage therapists, I could feel their like routine and going through the whole thing. And it was just her knowing. And she was like, yeah, it wasn't muscular. I could feel energetically the parts, like especially at my root, around my sacral and my hips, like the time that she just knew needed to be spent there. I was like, oh, this is just different. I could never go back.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Celebrating that. Okay. Body healing. I am celebrating that I feel like there's this real sovereign feeling of sovereignty in my life now that I've never really owned, and I think I did maybe when I was in a job where I was like, I know when I set my mind to something, I can get it. Like there's like this grounding down into reality. And I think it's because I haven't been clear on what I wanted or what I've desired. And it's getting more and more clear what those desires are. And one of them have been like, I'm going to choose to stay in Chicago for when my lease is up at this current space. So for at least around a little over a year. I have a choice to seed somewhere and to plant a seed and to tend to it for like 4 seasons, which makes me a little bit sad because I miss my friends in California like Siobhan, but I also know like so much is possible. Like Siobhan can come visit, like I will have more space to host my friends too, and like what's possible. Yeah, and like what that means also for like my financial income. Like, okay, I'm gonna have to make it happen. Like, so there's that like ownership and responsibility too that I'm owning and I'm celebrating. That pressure feels good though, and because I've made the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Pressure makes diamonds, baby.
Mm-hmm. And you're choosing your hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dang, celebrating all of us. It feels really like a new season. I don't know marked by what exactly, but literally just the last couple weeks have been like, dang, like we have done a lot of work, and I am like actually celebrating like all 3 of us and witnessing y'all of like what we've set out to do. I think for me, thinking of specifically the last 2 years is since we've been really like in friendship, and just how we've grown since then. That is part of, that was part of our intention with Tapped In, was like, let's just start sharing, even as imperfect as we feel, even as much growth we know there is to come. Like, let's just start sharing and allow others to witness, because maybe our purpose doesn't need to be so like teaching and intellectual. It's just simply showing up and showing people like, hey, we exist. We've been like kind of stumbling around, but we're here. We out here.
Stumbling around.
I feel like that personally.
Not to project or anything. Yeah, the stumbling has gotten us somewhere. The chaos has still gotten us somewhere.
Yeah, even sitting here now, like we, the 3 of us tried out Twitch last fall, kind of end of summer, and it was just so like Wild West. What are we even doing? But we're showing up, and we probably had so many funny ass moments of like, and special moments of like the people who would come through and get readings. And we've graduated to YouTube, and we've graduated to promoting and picking a time. And I'm like, that is a celebration.
Yeah.
Hence the butterfly theme.
That's right. Rebirth, metamorphosis. Here we are.
Yeah. So let's get into your metamorphosis, Kiki.
Sorry, say that again.
So let's get into your metamorphosis, because
great.
I love you.
I was ready to go on a train of thought, which this is perfect. So I was
go in.
Butterflies, how when they are emerging from their cocoons, that it's a real struggle. It's a real struggle. And so like when us humans capture them and like watch this struggle of butterflies emerging, we have this desire to want to go and like make it easier for them. But actually it's butterflies that like have been helped that struggle with thriving afterwards, because it's the struggle is part of their thriving. It's what makes them stronger, so that when they are able to fly and be released from their cocoon, that is what gives them the most longevity and life. So that's just here to say, like, the stumbling, the struggle is for our own thriving. So I'm really excited to share more about my own metamorphosis. And should I go into the unraveling? Is that kind of the...
Yeah. So, our theme is what comes after unraveling. And I'm sure there's been like several, I feel like we're always, I feel like we've been incarnated as butterflies like at least 7 times since we met each other. But tell us about your latest, or the one that feels on your heart today, the unraveling and what came after that has led you to sitting here right now.
Yeah. You know, it does feel so cliche to go back to 2020, but that's really where it was for me. And it really started to happen actually in December of 2019. I got fired from this job. I write about this in my new Substack. So if y'all want to subscribe, you can get the like real dirty dirt on this story. But I was fired from a job where I was a director for a children's choir. And I was also a full-time doctoral student at the time in some really incredible classes that like introduced me to the concept of decolonization in music and music education. And then at the same time, in this very like traditional children's choir program, that I was expected to uphold a lot of these standards and rules and ways of being that didn't feel aligned anymore. But I didn't have any of that language. And I had no idea that I was even struggling with tradition at that point. So I got fired, and that just like sent me into such a deep depression. I was like certain that I had just completely failed. And as a doctoral student in conducting, I was like, how am I getting my doctorate and I'm getting fired from this thing that is supposed to be in the bag for me? Like I shouldn't be having that be an issue. But there were a lot of different things that were going on in that environment that I won't get into now. But yeah, it was just a real struggle to show up as my whole self and authentically and to teach in a real embodied way, because I felt like I was upholding everybody else's standards and not my own, in a nutshell. So I got fired, and that December 2019, going into January, I was in just one of the lowest lows of my life. I was waking up at all times of the night. I was like, my heart would just be beating and accelerating when I'd wake up. I just had so much anxiety. And the only thing that would calm me was smoking weed and watching the Golden Girls. So like the Golden Girls are like my virtual TV grandmas, and they make me feel really safe and at home. And have for a long time. I started watching that show when I was like in second grade. So yeah, it was just one of those favorites. And so that's how I was calming myself. I had no like embodiment practice. I was not like really into my yoga practice. I had never, had a meditation practice at this point. And so I was just fumbling along way more than I am now. And that at the same time was when I received a message on Ancestry DNA from my Auntie Myra, who that unleashed this whole other path where I was able to reconnect with my biological father. And so that literally that time frame was just like this closing of one door, opening of another, that allowed me to like really do some deep soul searching that helped me realize ancestrally I was never built to uphold the standards of Western European choral music. And so because of that, and still knowing that I was very connected to singing and the voice, I had to do really, really deep searching to figure out, okay, why did I take this path in the first place? Because I knew I wasn't completely off the path. It was just that this particular model of singing and using the voice was not for me anymore. And I had finished what I was being told was I'm done with that cycle of learning in this sense, so that I can explore other ways of using the voice and helping folks empower themselves in using the voice, in strengthening their voice. Because soon after that, we had the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And it's like, okay, we have to use our voice for justice. We need to be using our voices to be allies and advocates for ourselves and our communities and our families. And so that's a long story, but just to say that, yeah, it took getting fired and being in one of the deepest depressions I've ever had to open up another pathway, and for me to trust that there was something else on the other side of it, that I could keep going and walking through that journey to figure out where I was going. And, fast forward to today, that's what I'm working on. That's how I serve others, is supporting others and strengthening their voice through decolonized, embodied practice that uses somatics and the spiritual to support others.
Who were some of the like teachers or practitioners that you came across that help you like learn some of those practices?
A lot of it I've developed myself. And however, the idea of decolonizing any sort of practice was introduced to me by my teacher, Dr. Evan Tobias at ASU. And that was when I was connected with the group Decolonizing the Music Room, I think is the name. And so I started to see like, okay, there's community around this, but not a specific like technique or pedagogy or practice that is like, okay, this is how you do that. And so it really has been the last 3 years plus that I've been developing this practice through my own, like really just like connecting with ancestors and following like, okay, this is what feels intuitively right when I go to sing. This is what I need to do to ground myself, to feel safe, to establish a sense of embodiedness, that I'm not just singing from the neck up, but I'm singing with my entire body.
This is so juicy. Sorry.
Go in, Midori.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you, like, this whole process, knowing that you reunited in early 2020 with your dad's side, what was that like for you, navigating that, knowing that there was something so off, and knowing that you were racialized in a way, but not knowing how? Or had you had the ancestry at that point to know you were Filipino? Or can you share a little more about that?
Totally. So I want to say it was maybe 2 years before I met my dad that I did the ancestry DNA test. And at that point, the algorithm, it's changed so many times. So
I get new emails every few months. Yeah.
Yes, it changes all the time. So when I first took it, it said that I was 50% East Asian. And I didn't know what that meant. Like, that's just too vague. There's no specificity around that at all. So I just kind of wrote it off like, okay, I'm never going to know. And then not knowing
Did you think you were Asian? Can I just ask?
So I was told this is like where a lot of my crises come from, is that I was told, because I was adopted, that because my dad was from Hawaii, that I was part Hawaiian.
Got it.
Okay, so I had this kind of like label, but it never really felt right, because I was like, I know that there's more than just Hawaiian people in Hawaii, and not everyone who's in Hawaii is Hawaiian. So that's why I felt it was really important for me to figure that out. And now I know why, because it was like, yes, there's Hawaiian culture in your family, but you are Filipino. And so it was probably, by the time my auntie reached out to me, it did say that I was had Filipino ancestry. But at that point, I still didn't even know what that meant. Where I grew up in Wisconsin, there was not a Filipino restaurant. There weren't people that were actively and proudly saying they were Filipino. So I really don't know if there were any other Filipinos in that area. However,
I remember someone asking me, what is a Filipino, before, like in college. This white guy was like, what is a Filipino? Or people would be like, oh, so you speak Spanish? I'd be like, no. They'd be like, I thought that you're like Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
The Philippines is like this whole other,
I was so confused. But what's really interesting is that when I was doing my student teaching in college and my undergraduate, I was a co-op teacher. So I was doing my student teaching with a co-op who was Filipino. And when I was with her, she kept saying, you're Filipino. You're just Filipino. I know you are. And I was like, maybe. But she just the whole time. And so now, like, once I like really put all these puzzle pieces together, I was like, oh my gosh, my ancestors were trying to tell me then. Like, and the fact that I got to study and observe and shadow like a woman Filipina at that time, like now it makes so much sense that like, wow, I was held and supported and guided by my ancestors this entire time. It didn't matter that I didn't know. There were clues, but truly like they were there for me the whole time.
That's so beautiful. And I love that, like, you know, your answer to like even what teachers or whatever, like I did it myself because I think this was the first year that I've actually looked for studying frameworks and like reached kind of that threshold of where my intuition led me. And now I'm like ready, like, okay, there's a value to also understanding. You know, now I know more, time to learn more. Like there's a value to the like cosmologies or all these different things, but really sitting there and being like, oh my gosh, like this was literally like how I was like cleansing myself, how I've been grounding myself. Like so much of it is so intuitive. And then to put those frameworks, it just is so further like affirming and mind blowing. Like, dang. And for those who don't know, Kiki and I are both Filipino and Irish. And that was, we're now building this theory around like I do have a theory around the Philippines and like Southeast Asia and like Ireland, Scotland cultures, but it really is fascinating that the similarities in the cultures.
Yeah, you know, I grew up just thinking there was no one else like me, you know, and to have this community and to have this friendship, it's like, wow, not alone. Sorry, Midori.
Oh no, I was just remembering what actually Lily had said this past weekend about practices just being like intuitive, because it's like literally embedded in our body. It's so somatic, that memory, and it just makes sense that those things would have like started to come through intuitively. And it's just so rewarding to like actually have the framework now. Oh yeah, mic feedback too. Let me see. I wonder if it's.
Is that better? I turned some levels down. Okay.
Yeah, it's cool. Like Siobhan, like
yeah. Can you share more about that, Midori? Like who is Ate Lily? And
yeah. So House of Capua. What my friend Alex, who I live with, one of my really close friends, had a opening for their public sculpture called House of Capua, which is a public installation honoring Filipino indigenous culture, tradition, as well as like the ecology and animistic principles of like Capua being interconnected. So it was this big sculpture that we all came to honor the land and weave in these this plant material that was recycled from local florists. And she had an elder come and speak, Ate Lily, who is the executive director of the Center for Babaylan Studies. And we went to the after party post ceremony. I'm still getting a little bit of feedback. Do you hear it, Siobhan?
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
We could just mute while you're talking.
Okay. And she was really speaking about like, what was I talking about? Oh my gosh, I've already lost my train of thought. She was
the after party at
House. I know, but what was the main topic? My neurodivergent brain.
Was it that you were looking back at like frameworks and
and she was just basically speaking to like how our bodies hold so much wisdom, and how like even when you feel disconnected from your lineage, you're never disconnected because it's so embedded in our bodies and we could never forget it. And she was talking about really feeling like what her journey of reclaiming her ancestry, and particularly when she went to the ceremony and looking at a lot of like the indigenous Filipino embroidery, and like actually touching it and like just breaking down crying, and like hearing the songs that they were singing and just having this like visceral reaction to it, because her whole life she had intellectualized the healing process, or like really intellectualized the cultural history, and to actually experience the art is what like cracked her open. And I just think it's so fascinating, and probably like just such a beautiful weaving of like what we're talking about, of how when we activate our voices, when we actually have the physical experiences of these traditions, like, and in our bodies, it just opens up so much.
Yeah, especially around just continuing on Filipinos, since that's our perspective. And Midori also is Filipino, Filipino coded. um, it really is interesting, and also something that I grieve a lot, looking at this inherent connection to art and music. Like, what are Filipino stereotypes? That we all sing and dance, and that is so intertwined with our spiritual existence, and that it's been severed and kind of evolved. And I don't want to say, like, speak too much for Filipinos in the Philippines, because that's been like a hot topic online lately too, some kind of beef saying that Philams aren't, anyways. But Filipinos now have this reputation for being like holding American culture. Like, I remember my cousin saying hella and being like, where did you even pick that up? And like the reality TV, and like there's such this pride of like being tapped in with American culture musically, and of course that like American culture shaped by Black folks and the music. But you hear this, like there's always just this running joke of like the soulfulness of like Filipinos, the casualness with which we sing and perform, and that our house parties are literally like, me being 12 years old, like being told to just perform a song after dinner for people, and that just being so normalized, and how we've lost that tie in with like, this is our way to spirit, and instead been told the church is the way to spirit. And like, that's something I've really grappled with a lot, is thinking about the loyalty and the devout like Catholicism of Filipinos to the church, because there is this very visceral connection, this very visceral feeling of spirit, where then we've forgotten that it already lives within us, and we're told that if you leave the church, you're going to lose that. And if that's what I believe, I'm never leaving the church, because it's so powerful. And like, Kiki, I know you grew up in the church. So like, just knowing that like that's such a fucked up manipulative thing, that's like telling us like your connection only happens here, and then seeing like the karaoke, the TFC shows, all of it, and being like, y'all, it's everywhere. It's literally, we can't stop it. It's even in the videos of people in prison are dancing. Like, come on. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I love that you pulled all of that in, because it is really important that I acknowledge and be very clear. Like, I was adopted into like a German English family, and so I am new to exploring my Filipino roots and culture. And so the way that it is interpreted by me is from someone who did not grow up in the culture. And at the same time, as you mentioned, I grew up in the church. My adoptive mom is an ordained Lutheran Presbyterian pastor, and she's also adopted me as a single mom. So she's very strong-willed, very determined. Like, was a pastor in the 80s when there just were not many female pastors, and so she like walked through a lot of different things, a lot of fires for being who she is. And then also, just because I was raised in a Protestant church, she gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of space to explore my spirituality. And so even though, yes, I was raised Christian and raised in the church and have my own religious trauma, I wasn't raised Catholic. And so I think also that being able to see a woman in spiritual leadership was really important for my story, to know that it's something that I don't, even though I have been afraid of it for a long time, that's for different reasons. It's not because the church ever said, or there wasn't an example for me to say, oh, women can't take up this space and women can't. My mom was right there, giving a sermon every Sunday. I was, being preached to by my mom every Sunday. And so it was like a very fluid thing where I could ask her questions after church, after her sermon, and I could be in dialogue, and I could challenge what she was saying or add on to what she was saying. And so it was a very different relationship that I had with the church, which I think was so important to my journey and finding myself in this somatic spiritual world, that I didn't have to overcome Catholicism in a lot of ways.
Well, you overcame so many other things, so I'm really grateful that, Spirit threw you a bone and gave you a woman to at least, like, have that, like, that just seems like this beautiful through line through your life, like church and choir. And so, yeah, what were your like, I know you said we won't go too much into the church, but like your blocks with it, I love that it wasn't the traditional ones, but what I actually think of, okay, so I'm going to mention kind of how I've been framing recently for myself, like this in between, also this like growing up in a liberal family, like when things aren't so extreme, we're actually given a better insight and a comfort to actually see what, like, take a real look at what's going on without it being so extremely like unsafe. So there's something really beautiful about you having this like safe person that you can kind of like look and get a grip on it all without being so far outside that it's like, I can't be there, I can't at all participate. And I compare that to being from like a liberal family, because it kind of is that too. Like, I'm like having a new set of exploration on politics because I'm not coming from these people are so effing problematic, da 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 da. I'm coming from, these are the good ones, and there's still issues here. And like, I'm getting kind of like a better peek inside of what the situation is. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So where to even start? I think there were definitely some issues like around theology, and like certain interpretations that were being taught not by my mom, but just like through Sunday school, or like if my mom wasn't leading the discussion, then there were a lot of problematic things that were being taught, that my mom, was constantly fighting, but like she had to keep her job to pay for our bills, to keep a house over my head. And so there were certain things that like she couldn't fight to the very end, because that would put us in jeopardy for our safety. And then that also made me like, that's another layer of like me shutting down my voice, is like, I know this stuff is problematic too, but I feel like I can't necessarily be in debate with some people because I don't want that to reflect poorly on my mom. And so there was a lot of like weird dynamics that way, but also just like my mom being a white mother that adopted a Filipino child, and then me being raised in a predominantly white Protestant church. I'm like probably mostly the only person of color in the church for most of my life, and being an Asian embodied person, like there was just a lot of toxic white dudes that would like make comments on my body, that would make comments on what I was wearing, whether or not I wore high heels or not. I was like really into dressing, like wearing a dress, wearing high heels. Like that was where I could like get out all of my like fun, exciting dresses and express myself that way. And exactly. And so I love getting dressed up and doing my makeup and curling my hair. And so then it became something that the men would comment on when I would walk by. And it was like all ages of men. And it was like, dude, you have a wife and children right here. Can you just not? Like, that's disgusting. And so that, again, made me want to tame down and not be seen and to like hide even further. And so it was constantly this battle of like, am I going to choose me, or am I going to take this in and then, react and perform a different way so that this stuff doesn't happen to me? So it was like the environment of church that allowed that kind of thing to happen, as well as the actual like teachings of the church.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how we really, and I know Siobhan and I have talked a lot about this, how the desire for people to have that 11th house experience of like being in that like touch point of community where it's like you don't even need to be closely intimate with these people, but you have that like consistent touch point every week where you go and there's like programming and there's this container that is held and you listen to a message, and it's like that consistency of community that is missing. So I'm curious about like what you think about what actually nourished you about that community, what you miss about it, given I don't know if you go to church anymore, but like what do you feel like really actually nourished you about those spaces, and where do you kind of see those spaces evolving given the current landscape and what people are desiring now?
Yeah, for sure. I am not going to a church right now. And my mom actually retired last year. I think she was in the ministry for 34, 35 years. And that's her story. I'll leave her to share that part. But
I'm like, I want to talk to your mom also.
I'll get into it next episode.
I had her watch a couple episodes of Tapped In with me, so she's very much a follower. And so anyway, yeah, we're not attending church. It's really difficult for me to attend church when my mom is not the pastor, because I'm like really picky and like I can read into sermons, or I like to read into sermons. And it's like, if you're not like catching my heart and spirit and mind all together, then like I just don't have time for it. But yes, the things that were really positive of growing up in the church, what I remember really being so impactful was like there was this back row of old ladies that I loved going to talk to every Sunday morning. And the sad part now is like many of them have already transitioned, but there was like this row of I don't know, like 4 or 5 women that had been best friends since like high school, and they still lived in their town and they raised their kids together and they go to church together. But like it was just listening to their stories, listening to their trials, their challenges of like what they did growing up and how the world was different for them. And also like tapping into the gifts and skills that they had. Like I had this one woman, her name is Helen, and she tailored my prom dress for me for a couple years. And like being able to like stand in her living room as she like told me about how she was a home ec teacher, and just like the struggles of being a teacher back then, and like how she was raising her family. And like that's a skill that I do not have. I don't have the ability to sew. I know how to crochet a little bit, but like I can't necessarily just like make this stuff happen the way she was able to. And it was so powerful to just be in space with these women that, you know, they really believed in the values that they had, you know, and they didn't have to necessarily, like, what am I trying to say? A lot of my dreams, I've always thought, I have to go to the big city. I have to escape this small town. I have to escape this small town mindset and community. And I think that's actually what's really interesting about now is like I've moved back to a fairly small town. It's like 10,000 people here. And I always thought that was never going to be for me. But I'm realizing like through my decolonization that like I do want to have space where I can have my own garden, where I can grow my own vegetables, where I can can food in the winter. And I want to be able to pass those skills and that knowledge down to my daughter and my children. Like I feel like that's how I resource my family to survive in the future. That there's so many more radical ways that we can be homemakers and mothers and parents and caregivers, that it's not always about like the shiny performance side that I always thought I was like leaning into, being a musician and being a Leo and all of those things. But like what's really beautiful is being able to make my home an environment that can we can cultivate these skills for what the world actually is today. Like, it's not just about fame and money, and that sounds cool still, but how can we do that in a way that's like really ethical and grounded in our values? And so a lot of what I do in my home now and what I'm thinking of wanting to build and create for my family is actually really rooted in those traditions and values that those women had and that my grandma had, and how people lived back then in the 30s and 40s, with like food and caring for one another, like not buying fast fashion, and just really being intentional around these things.
What's cool too is like we can be in connection now with the rest of the world, which is a big differentiating factor from the past, where if you lived in a small town, you wouldn't have access to any other part of the world really, unless you traveled far. So it's like cool because we do have that innovation now where it's possible. Like we've developed a relationship for almost 3 years off online. Siobhan hasn't even met you yet, and she was your doula. Like, that's freaking wild.
And literally when Midori and I met, I was like, I feel like we've done this already. Like,
yeah.
I feel like
we have. This is just the only timeline we haven't met.
Exactly.
Or touched, I would even say. I don't even like saying we haven't like met, right? It's like
exactly.
Oh my God. Remember we changed the settings that whatever, ignore them. But we did change the settings that people could only comment if they were following for 10 minutes. So if that's the case and you waited around to say that, that's really sad. But what I wanted to go back to was the idea of Kapwa and just the philosophy of Kapwa, because I think that I want to hear what it means to you and how it's like resonated for you. And I'm going to go into our Twitch settings while you share about what Kapwa means to you.
Oh man, Kapwa. So the first time that I was introduced to that word, I believe was by Gabe's Torres in 2020. And then in doing more research, like that just led me on like this path of trying to find as much information about pre-colonial Filipinx culture as possible. And so that led me to Ate Lenny, who is actually Ate Lily's sister. And, Kapwa, in a shortened way, you can just explain it as like seeing the self in the other. But it's not just like the other human. It's about seeing the self in nature, in the birds, in the bees, seeing the self in the cosmos, seeing the self in all of these physical, non-physical, animate, inanimate objects, and knowing that we're all interconnected. And so however I show up is having a ripple effect on the rest of the world around me. And so Kapwa is really important to me when I start to think about my responsibility and impact that I have with the rest of the world. Because while I was learning about Kapwa, I was really into this like activist, activated sense of self where I wanted to fight, and be really aggressive about like abolish the police and just like wanting to rage really around how fucked up this world is. And what I was realizing is like, oh, wait, that's also embodying white supremacy. That's also embodying really violent ways of communicating with other people. And that doesn't allow for real conversations to like go anywhere, or learning to happen, or for connections to be created in a real like grounded way where we can dream together rather than just like butting heads online. So yeah, I really think Kapwa is what helped me start to realize that like, oh, I have to do work on myself so that I can actually see the beauty that is in the world. So I can see the beauty in the cosmos, see the beauty in other humans, and know that the things that are fucked up are fucked up for a reason. And it's because people are oppressed and people have been violated. People have been traumatized, because I've been violated, oppressed, and traumatized. And so once I can tend to those traumas and those wounds, that's when I was able to actually look out and be like, wow, like we need healing. We need spaces for connection and honesty and transparency, and realizing that like the violence that someone has or had caused is the root of it finds its way back into colonization and all of these other forms of oppression.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it really comes back to what we talk a lot about is like co-regulation and just that rooted knowing that we are connected beyond, like we are somatically and energetically connected with one another, the earth, the cosmos, that we're all just reflections and mirrors. And that is what I love about that word, because I can't think of any other, I don't know of any other words that really capture that feeling. That's like, you aren't just my community in that I know you live around me. Like, I see that your freedom is tied with my freedom. Your dignity is tied with my dignity, your oppression with mine. And that is what I really, really love about the concept of kapwa, is like, it's not just I respect you, it's I am you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. And we feel that. I think, us talking so much about not spending physical time together. And we talked about that last week with Flo, and how Flo's 420 healing ceremonies really, really impacted my understanding of energy, and like really helped me believe that further. That was like, wow, I can feel these people. Like, I can feel, being your virtual doula, like I am hearing the songs. Like, one of like the like sweetest moments was doing a Reiki session for Kiki, where I was like, do you know the song This Little Light of Mine? I'm hearing it. And Kiki's like, that's the song that I sing to her. I sing it often. And I'm like, yeah, like we are just so connected beyond space and time that through a Zoom call, I'm like literally hearing your voice and like singing in my soul. Like, it's just so trippy and so beautiful.
It's just scary to me that like we've been convinced out of that interconnectedness. Like that's what
Yeah.
me is like, oh, this is so normative, this way of existing, and the magical nature of the universe and the interconnectedness of the cosmos, and like how our so many civilizations have thought about our interconnectedness with the planets and seeing them as ancestors and like tracking them. And it's just like, how did we get so I mean, we know how we got so disconnected. And that's what's beautiful, is that, wow, the reclamation process is like, I think that like the fact that we had it taken away and now that we're remembering is like such a beautiful process, and it's trippy as fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's like, it's so ingrained otherwise that it also trips me out how much effort sometimes it takes to believe it. Like, that is what I credit our friendships to, is like really having those go-to people that we don't have to explain what the dream meant, what the like, me catching myself even still to this day with like family and certain friends of just, like, oh, if you believe that stuff, or not to be all like psychic witchy, whatever, like make it like lighter and funny. Whereas Kiki will just be like, I had a dream of me and you and your sisters and da 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 da. And I'm just like, yeah, that happened. Like, thank you. Like, yeah, we were dancing last night on another plane. Midori saving me in my dreams. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's so true, and connecting like Ate Lily back into this conversation, that she's talked about that in our container called Pagsuyo, that is ran by the Center of Babaylan Studies. and talking about how colonization is really a dissociation from our indigenous souls, that we all have that, and that it's the disconnect, it's that disassociation from myths, from spirit, from dreams, from our bodies, for, you know, in all of these ways. And it's so true. And I think that's how the colonizer silences us, to like bring back the voice in that too, that we filter ourselves, we filter our voices, we filter our messaging so that we aren't seen as woo-woo and witchy and magical, because so many people around us are skeptical and are non-believers in magic. And it just shows like how deeply we've all been wounded by this dissociation.
Yeah, it's just further, you saying that just reminds me how important it is for us to keep showing up and having these conversations where we're not censoring for the comfort of people who may not get it yet, while still, inviting anyone watching in to learn. And I think our first round on Twitch kind of showed that. Like, remember, there would be guys in there that would be like, we would use a clickbait like Asian witches, blah, 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 blah. And like people really like stuck with us, and we're like, wow, like you really opened my eyes of how normal it is. And I think the other thing, like we talked with Flo too last week, coming both of you from academia backgrounds, is how it just cannot be intellectualized. And so I would love to hear from you, Kiki, like how going through that, because you got your doctorate, you even took a teaching job, and just recently, it just seems like the timing was right for you to leave that. Who knows what would bring you back, but what is it about that space that you are feeling like, kind of similar, I guess, with the church question from Midori? Like, what is it about those spaces that you really love and want to take into what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think to start off with, like, what I love is just being able to hold space for students to ask questions and explore. However, the thing that I don't like are all of the topics, or like what I actually have to be teaching is like not interesting to me anymore.
That's literally why I didn't become a teacher. I wanted to be a school teacher. And then when I didn't even, like you said earlier, like you didn't have the language of why, but I remember just being like, I don't want to teach this curriculum. I would just rather teach whatever I want. Like,
exactly.
I'm not doing standardized testing.
100%. Yeah, it's so robotic, and there's like a lot of, I've done all of that research on the history of public education in the United States and how it emerged through the Industrial Revolution. And so, similar to factories, schools were built to be like factories, where like we're on a bell schedule. And so they're just creating robots to like walk in a straight line and get from one place to the next. And here's, your test. And so we can, that is all real. And so I thought, I'm going to get myself out of K-12. I'm going to go to grad school, and I'm going to teach at the college level, because that's so much more freedom, right? But no, because it gets even more tricky, because then you're really upholding this particular tradition that has been around. When I'm teaching music history, I'm starting in the medieval era, which is like, 12th, 13th century, and we root ourselves there. And so it's like fully in colonization, right? And we uphold this tradition that ultimately I believe was, music from the Catholic Church, early Catholic Church. It was still like chants that were being used to connect to God and connect to spirit. And of course, in that medieval church Renaissance classical eras, you know, and up until today, that was still only for a few people that could have access to singing that music and accessing God, and that was only for the clergy. But still, like, with that sense, I can look at that history now and kind of piece apart, like, oh, okay, well, sound and music and frequency has always been used to access God, but it was cut off from the regular people, from everyone else. And so where was I going with all of that? Just, you know, what I love to now, when I am in those spaces, I love to disrupt that conversation where it's not just like, okay, and so, you know, we teaching music theory in a very traditional sense. I'm like, oh, have you looked at how music theory represents and is an example of the hierarchy that we see in the social world as well? And there's people that have done research on that have backed up those claims. That's not research I've done, but, you know, I like to disrupt those conversations, but that also gets really exhausting to just constantly say, this is what I'm supposed to teach you in a traditional sense, but here's like the subtext and the stuff that I actually am interested in. And so really it was a means to an end for me to get my doctorate and to be in academia. It was like, okay, so you can talk to folks about what we see as the music industry in education, I guess, and then be able to kind of debunk a lot of those myths, and see, okay, this is how it's been taught for hundreds of years, and to decolonize that and get it back to how sound, vibration, frequency is just a powerful energy to, like, you know, be in different dimensions and realms and connect yourself to spirit.
This is where I'm seeing your MC and Aquarius come in, because just being within the institution, it sounds like you're finding your own way to disrupt it, like you're midwifing, basically. So you're there, you're like, okay, let's take this structure. I'm in here, but I'm like going to usher in this new paradigm of thought that you need to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that not completely like you're still in it, because there's like a level of like you have to make, you know, your ends meet, and this is your living, but you're finding a way to still be radical, which I think is so fucking cool. And I'm also just, so many wheels are spinning about the possibilities of creating our own institutions. Like, that really is my vision for our Alchemy Academy, is to create spaces and provide funding for like you to teach the way you want to teach. Like, that's my goal. I'm like, let's give you a stage to basically, and the funding so that you can teach that the way you want to. And like, maybe even, you know, these people might follow you from.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, I taught this conducting class at Millikan University spring of 2022. And in that course, like, I taught them, you know, I taught them their 4 patterns, I taught them their 3 patterns, but I really challenged them to think of their role as a conductor, not as a dictator who's setting a time and sticking with it, but being a conductor of energy, and not just a conductor of the musical energy, the sound frequency, but to like be an alchemist, where they're taking this group's that's in front of them, taking in their energy, being present with the people in the room, and alchemizing that energy so that they're creating these gestures that are not just improving, but like pulling out this music from their group's soul, you know, like really digging deep, so that it's not just this robotic exercise that we're doing. Like, we are in relationship, we're in conversation, we're in dialogue through our bodies, our gestures, and our voices throughout the whole process. And my students in that class are really on board with it. Like, I was really lucky that they were like, as you know, I had people that did tarot in there. I had people that were, you know, non-binary, queer, and they were just like here to talk about music in a more expansive way than what they had been taught, while still knowing that they had to get up there and show them, you know, show the rest of the music faculty like I know what I'm doing. I can do this stuff, but we can also think broadly and think really intentionally about the music that's on the page. And that's what I think is more exciting, is when you can have that depth of understanding and relationship, so that it doesn't just come through as this academic exercise.
That's what's so inspiring too about what's possible. Like, we need people like you in the system, disrupting from the inside, like midwifing this new paradigm of thought, this like
And
these
yet it's so harmful to be in that space.
so
It's
true.
so harmful.
Yeah.
And that's what's really sad, is like, there's a lot of universities and that want to say they're here to uplift Black and brown voices, and then when you really bring it, they don't have the support there to actually keep you there. It's like, actually, this is reparations.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you're unable to like actually provide me what I need to survive, then I don't have the capacity to stay here.
Yeah. We're really seeing, I think, so many people who've reached the top of what's possible within these institutions and now turning and going, yeah, it's still not enough. And your story, I think, is so impactful for people to see, because they can see a yet another example of somebody who achieved, did everything, like, just, so many people that come in is like, I reached the top of my field and I don't want it. It comes at these costs that I don't want. But like, also the other thing that's on my mind as you're talking, and it's similar to what you said about choosing your small town. It's like, you can be radical wherever you're at right now. And I think that's also really important for people to see, like, the fact that white supremacy and colonialism touches everything, that every topic runs back to the roots. It means that anywhere you are, you have an opportunity to disrupt it.
That's right.
And Jazz's Sun Fairy last night used a term, window of tolerance, that is new for me. That's just kind of like you, like, there, you had a level of tolerance that, like, and I could totally be using this wrong, Jazz, if you're watching, but like, what I took from it is just that concept that was like, you had this, you reached, and she was talking about it in the sense of timeline jumping, that like she reached there, and then now it's time to like even expand, even get whatever, like grew and grew in this container you were in. And so you reached it, you tolerated it for a while, and then you were like, I no longer can tolerate it, so now I need to go on to the next. But you're also offering mentorship to people who are along that path, who might have the tolerance to be in those spaces and to do it, and you can help them navigate that with maybe adjusting expectations or whatever it is that you do one-on-one with them. That's like, okay, let's help you make this as good as possible. And then kind of knowing that like by the end of it, they're probably going to eventually be like, still not enough, we're out.
100%. Yeah. And I think what is so important, like, thanks for bringing up the mentorship program, is like, I'm still a practitioner of the somatic spiritual practices, that had I had that going into these jobs and into these academic institutions, perhaps I would have been able to regulate better within that institution. And so I am like 100% aware that not everyone has the privilege to just like leave their job. And like, I don't either. Like Midori said, I'm still like, I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out, for my own safety and my family's safety. But, just to be able to have these regulation practices at your disposal while you're still in it, so that you can actually create a plan that will resource you, that will keep you safe and your family safe when or if you decide to make that transition into something else. And I think that's just really important, because sometimes I think we see a lot of teachers leaving education, which I totally understand and support. And also, my question is, do you know what is going to make you happy? You know, like, are you just going to, like, is the grass just going to be greener over there and then it's just going to keep getting greener in all these different places? Let's like ground ourselves in ourself and our intuition and our creativity before we make these radical changes, so that we are not wasting, not that any time is really wasted when you're exploring and living your life, but you know, I do feel a sense of like, man, I kind of felt I felt lied to in a lot of ways in my journey, about like, okay, going into academia, that didn't quite work. Going into entrepreneurship 100% and feeling like mentors in the spiritual realm as well gave me a
Yeah,
lot of
because
promises.
the answer a lot of times is, oh, you're done with this, go be a consultant or a coach.
And that doesn't work either, you know?
Period.
So, you know, it's just one of those
Go
journeys
profit
where-
off of your
Yeah,
peers instead. That's a solution.
exactly.
Yeah, let's manipulate people so that they think that you need another person to lean on.
And I think
outside of
it's
themselves.
that's still like rooted in scarcity though. Like even they may not even realize it. I think that's what's missing, that we are really like why I think collectively we're trying to speak up here through soft power is like no amount of new stuff is going to solve your experience. Your orientation in the world is actually the problem. It's not your job, it's not your spouse. And like yes, it is those things too, but what do we have power over? We have power over our perception, our expectations, our like our I think orientation is a word for me that's like how am I orienting myself in this situation so that I could have a better experience, cuz it's the same thing, you're going to transfer those problems over. It's the same reason why like rich people who started poor saying I never have enough get really rich and they still don't have enough, and then your name's Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Like nothing is ever enough because you haven't dealt with your root cause of scarcity and misery and belief that something new is going to solve it. Like that is capitalism.
Yep.
Yes. The idea that there's a destination actually is what I realized philosophically within the past couple months, is like, oh, there is no end point. We are not here to accomplish this goal of fixing society. This is like, and this is something Ate Lily said, was like our goal of even learning about indigenous like ways of being is not going to be like, we're not going to re-indigenize. That's not going to happen in our lifetime. We're planting seeds for like generations ahead of us. It's not about us, you know, like when
And I think
that work.
I think spirit is for me the only thing that helped me to feel comfortable in that was me understanding and truly believing and feeling like the delineation of time, like my soul being so infinite that it took the pressure off. That was like, I only have this one lifetime to do this. And yeah, I mean, isn't that, I feel like that's the everything everywhere all at once premise. It's like, none of this matters because you're so infinite. Therefore, here's your shot. So what are you going to do with it?
Nothing matters, so everything matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is a shared thing. And I want to take us a little into that, like how that has impacted your motherhood, Kiki, because for those who don't know, Kiki joined me as a co-founder of the Birth Realm, which just felt really natural after stewarding this idea. I just was like, well, it just makes sense to share, co-steward this vision and this world that we've kind of materialized together through the astral. And I think again it comes back to that root of like, especially mothers and pregnant people, like you're especially if you're already pregnant, like you can't go do all these new things. You're gonna need to confront your experience in your body, because that is just it. Like nobody can bail you out from it, nobody can save you. So you like, yeah, you're only here to you can only save your own experience. And you did a lot of, and we're actually going to go live to have a whole conversation about this on its own on Friday, because we could go on forever on it. But I want to just like, for people now, how did all of that serve you coming into motherhood? And then maybe how has it also like surprised you, having all the tools to like see that even that is not linear and guaranteed?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like our work together, I don't even like to call it work. It was so much, it was really restful. It was very playful. Co-creating space with Siobhan for the preparation of the birth of my daughter and postpartum as well. In our sessions, Siobhan led me into the birth realm and led it through this guided journeying that allowed me to connect with my intuition on a deeper level, for me to really like begin to paint the picture of what the birth realm is for me. Because the birth realm is this realm that we all do enter. And I would include everyone in that birth realm, any creator, which we all are creators. But specifically, as we're talking about pregnancy, any pregnant person can enter this and will enter the birth realm. But it looks different for all of us, right? Like whatever allows you to like tap deepest into your power. And so, like session after session, it was like this building that I was able to do in my mind, but in my body. And leading up to the birth, which so interesting. Siobhan told me that she was doing Reiki for me, literally like up, and we weren't in connection that night for some reason, but Siobhan was doing Reiki, and right up until the moment that I believe my water broke that night.
I fell asleep. I was doing Reiki. I was watching TV on my couch, sending you Reiki, and I fell asleep. And then for whatever reason, I never texted you until the afternoon. I was like, I wonder what Kiki's up to. And then you texted me a picture of like, had my baby this morning.
So it was amazing. Like I was just like, wow, that was so, like I was just so supported that entire time. And so like then also in real life, I had my husband, I had my dad, I had my mom, all surrounding me. I had an in-person doula, and then an apprentice for my in-person doula, and as well as a midwife and an assistant to the midwife. So I had like full on team surrounding me through my labor, but I had my eyes closed the whole time because I was just in this other world. Like it didn't matter what anyone else was doing. Like my doula was like giving me words of encouragement and rubbing my back, and my husband was giving me counter pressure on my hips, and it was just, that all was helpful, but it was like me in my body knowing that I was going to feel and work through every contraction with my breath and my voice. And I was just able to really like moan and groan and release through the voice with every contraction. And it was just a really beautiful planned home water birth that I was able to have. It was like so magical. I was able to just be in this like beach world that I had created, and I was just like moving with the ocean and like in a tub. So I was like in the ocean in my mind, but in a tub in real life, and feeling the water and feeling that support of like Mother Earth just like surrounding me, being able to like really let go in those moments. I'm such a type A, just like all the time.
That was your biggest concern, was
That
the lack
I
of
was worried
control.
that was going to just tighten me up and not allow me to release and open up and feel that power of letting go and surrendering. And just being able to tap into that literally for hours, and have just like a really beautifully supported birth. The midwife didn't touch me at all. I was really lucky to have just like a really on point team, but my midwife wasn't there to like touch me or maneuver anything. Like they just listened to me and what I wanted. And the only time that she got really close to me was to catch my baby. And so it was just me. And that was just like so empowering to have a vision for what I thought my birth was going to be and literally make it happen through like really intentional planning, using my voice to find the right caregivers and healthcare providers, and know like on all levels, spiritual, physical, it all matters. And that's what I think is so powerful, is like I actually was able to put this framework and what are you calling it? A framework and a
Philosophy.
philosophy into real life, and it was so beautiful. So I'm a huge supporter. I can't wait to hold others and share that with them, because it was, you hear so many traumatic birth stories, and I know, Siobhan, you've talked about that too, and it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't.
Yeah, and like hearing you list all the people involved, I'm like, some people might hear that and think, oh, that's so like much, that's so a lot. And I just want people to know like that is how it's always been. Like that is how, like, yes, it's beautiful that there's an option to get emergency care when needed. And, again, catch us Friday because we'll go way more into the whole conversation. But that perspective that like it's only me, it's same that kind of thing, like nothing matters. Oh, so nothing matters. Like it just depends on your tone and your perception and your choice, really, because you're on your own can be the most terrifying thing for people. But in your case, like you came out of it like, I'm on my own. So like, look at this power I have. Look at this support I'm still going to collect for myself. But I'm on my own and I'm going to do a long, and it is a long work, like you came to me, we started before you were even pregnant. So I just want people to like know that and hear that. That's just like with community, with your voice, with spirit, not to be a corny ass bitch, but all things are possible. Like it just is. It just is. All things are, what is it? All things are possible through spirit that strengthens me. Philippians 4:13.
Oh, no, I just had an idea.
She's a Bible thumper.
I just had an idea. I feel like part of the communication of what the birth realm is would be like a film. Would be like a short, it doesn't even have to be like people giving birth. It's literally like transmission, like visuals, like what Kiki, because I think what it's connecting the dots between like, this is so creative that it actually needs to be communicated. Maybe, it'll be, it would be, it's like, a mixture of like words on a screen.
Oh, I
like
love that.
like or a translate, like trance journey vibe. Like what is that transmission? How do we communicate that through like a short video? I think that's what I'm thinking. Like that's so
That would be
cool.
so cool.
Your singing voice.
Yeah, that's us plotting and funding for our budget for all our creation because it's coming. So yeah, I'm really excited for the future of the birth realm because I just know that it's so, I added to the bio this week, ancestrally guided, because it so has been like, again, just catch us Friday so we can go into it because I just know we can go
What's
on
happening
forever.
Friday? Tell the people.
Oh yeah, we did. Friday, Kiki and I are going live, sharing around more of this story, co-creating the birth realm. And
is it on Instagram or
questions? We're actually going to start a new YouTube channel, I think. So we'll send that out to the birth realm. Get on the birth realm's email list. Are we ready for fun questions?
I love Siobhan's questions. I live for Siobhan's fun questions.
I can't. I just Google fun questions.
Oh, I was like, wow.
Some of them I came up with, but today I searched it.
You're so Gemini, Siobhan.
I have come up with my own too, but I liked these ones. I just kind of poke around what's on there. So this is I know Kiki probably has a good answer for this one. What's an insult that you've received that you're proud of?
Oh, I don't know if this is an insult. but a lot of people are surprised at how short I am. And so I was told that I give off 5'10" energy, but I'm 5'1".
Okay,
I'm
no,
super
Midori and
proud
I
that
have
I come
literally
off.
talked about on our own when we found out how tall you were. We were like, it's not computing.
Yeah, you give
It's
off
the
tall,
BDE.
tall person energy, like big. It's the Leo in you.
Yeah, yeah. And once you meet my dad, you'll be like, oh, okay.
No,
Nature-
Siobhan, literally, we freaked out. We freaked out.
We were like, she's lying.
Not gonna lie, when we heard that you were 5 feet, but you still, even still meeting you, you have an aura, like this ambiance about you, this aura of like, yeah, you're a Leo. Like
I come with many.
you are the
I come with
sun.
many spirits. I think
She rolls
they
deep.
like prop me up, you know?
They're your
She's
platform.
got an extra
too.
inch for every grandparent.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Love. Okay, who is the most influential person in your life right now?
These
Besides
are
your daughter.
These are really good.
These are really good. My mom. My mom right now, she is still working. She helps me with childcare so I can do my business and all of the things, still working, building a business, being here with y'all. She's helping me make homemade baby food. And she's just like so with me and intentional and present that yeah, I couldn't be doing life if she wasn't by my side.
Shout out to your mom. She's just awesome. Alternate lifetime job. I like to call it the post-capitalism job. Like if you could do anything, like in our post-capitalist world, what's your job? Mine is lunch lady.
Barista.
Ooh.
I want a latte from you. I think you'd be making cool ones like taro latte.
Ooh,
like
now I need it.
A latte art, and you would sing and like infuse it with Reiki.
She would just hand it off like this.
It would be a THC coffee bar.
Oh my god! I keep forgetting you're a stoner too. So
I messaged Siobhan yesterday. I was like, I can't wait for our stoner show, food show, where we like just travel around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Midori, do you have one?
I think I would be like a performer of some sort. Like I would learn an instrument and be in a band, or just or a dancer. Yeah, actually, basically what I think I'm going to be doing anyways. But yeah, that's what I would want to do.
That wasn't the question, man.
Okay, wait, fire tender. I'd love to be a fire tender.
Oh, okay. I like that. How would your this is actually a great one for this group. How would your parents describe what you do?
God.
If you have one, Midori, go for it.
No, I want to hear Siobhan's because I think you have an answer.
Yeah, you have
your
one.
Your mom.
How would they describe what I do?
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. Like every time I hear my parents speak about my work, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting job. Oh, well, actually, how would my parents describe what I do? Sit on my computer and pull tarot cards and smoke weed with my friends all day.
Not far from the truth.
So that is what I do.
I mean, that's pretty much what we all do, right?
Oh, goodness.
Gosh.
It took so long. Doula was already kind of like abstract enough for them.
Yeah.
I think I'll always be a music teacher to them.
Oh, music teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah, they would probably say it helps people have babies.
Yeah. Yeah, mine will just be like, she's in marketing. I tell them all the time I do astrology reading. I do readings, and they just disregard that. They don't think it's like part of actually what I do. It's like, actually, it's a really big part of what I do.
Have you ever given them a reading?
Yeah, I have.
Wow. Yeah. What was their reception like?
Oh, it was too intense.
My dad, like, all he could stop saying was, he couldn't stop saying, this is really intense. This is really deep. I did not expect this to be this deep. He just kept saying that over and over again. I'm like, yeah. He was like, it was really, I actually have a screenshot of him because it was virtual, of him just staring off into space.
Oh my God.
While mom was talking.
Yeah, all of my parents, they've come to a lot of my events online, and they're like,
I love that. I think you're the only person I know who I see like parents in the Zoom.
So cool.
They're really supportive, like all biological, adoptive, in-laws. But yeah, a lot of them will say that they'll see like dead people afterwards, like grandparents or parents or people that have transitioned. And so yeah, it's really interesting. So they're like, I don't know if I can partake. Like, it's a little too much for me. I'm like, really? Because I get addicted to that. Like, that's what I want to be.
Just another day in the life.
Yeah.
We have Kiki
That's
the
my life.
4th houser, Siobhan the 8th houser, Midori the 12th houser, just intense ass bitches.
Well, Kiki also has a Scorpio Pluto in the 7th. So we're equally intense in that way, I think. Like the wanting the intimacy and the
Okay, what is your favorite holiday movie? And what's your favorite holiday movie and what does it say about you?
The Family Stone with Sarah Jessica Parker. Do you all know that one?
I don't know it well.
Is that recent?
Why?
Is that new?
No, it's from 2008.
Oh my God, is that the one where there's a bunch of siblings and they're at the table and they're okay. I have this memory of like the awkward table conversation.
It's chaos and it's, oh my gosh, I love that energy of like a big family around a table and how there's just a lot of dysfunction. But the Family Stone is talking about the wedding ring that the oldest son is using to like propose to his partner that he brings home. But I love Diane Keaton. I love Craig T. Nelson. I love older actors like that. They just have a lot of soul.
Okay, who's your favorite Golden Girl?
It's probably Rose, Betty White.
I need to tell you this actually. Tell me why my son was brought to a shop. I don't know where they were, but his dad said, oh no, it was with my dad. My dad goes, you could buy anything in here. And he chose a Golden Girls car freshener. And he was like, he was like, they're really funny. And I was like, you don't know, there's no way he's ever seen the Golden Girls. But I'm like, there's a little old soul in there that used to love the Golden Girls. Yeah, I'm definitely Dorothy.
I see that.
And
I want to be Sophia though.
Yeah. Well, Midori, are you familiar with the Golden Girls?
I haven't watched it, no.
You're a Blanche.
Yeah.
She's the one that's always like dating and like she's cute and
she is super cute.
She's a romantic. She's a lover archetype, I think is why.
Oh, she works at an art museum.
Oh my gosh.
Still?
Is that like the Charlotte equivalent of Sex in the City?
Oh, in the show. Yes, but better.
Okay, got it.
But better.
Oh yeah, much better.
Cute. Okay, last question. I don't know which one to pick actually. Last question. Actually, this is the last question. Well, then the last one will be where can people find you? But this one is, what is the one meal that you had if you had to eat one for the rest of your life?
It can be a many course meal though.
Great. I love that.
No, it can't. Just kidding.
Okay.
Sure it can.
Just one. For the sake of time, just one.
Okay, we'll start with sashimi and poke as an appetizer.
How about this? Your last day. Like, what would you eat in your last day?
Okay, so sashimi, poke, pinakbet, mashed potatoes, bread with like olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and like sea salt pepper mix-ins, and what else? I'm forgetting. Oh, tacos, and pizza, margarita pizza. And
This is the most stretch of an answer.
You could tell she's a Venus
She's
Taurus
like at a
rising.
Vegas buffet right now.
I'm a Taurus rising.
Yeah.
I knew I shouldn't have asked you to this.
Ooh,
forever.
cinnamon and blackberry ice cream. That's my dessert.
Ooh. Yeah, my last day I think would be like dim sum. Dim sum for breakfast, burritos for lunch, and maybe like a whole Kamayan spread with like
Ooh.
fish, lumpia, mangoes,
Okay, so you just added
shrimp.
20 dishes at the end.
Yeah, I can't wait to eat together.
I know. I can't wait.
And everything you said, I'm like, this is like when me and Midori hang out, everything we eat.
Dim sum. Siobhan and I are very Taurus when we hang out. We do the same restaurant.
When I was with Willa this weekend, that's literally what we did. We found this restaurant finally because we had no reservations, and we just ordered everything on the menu. It was amazing.
Love. Well, where can people find you? How can they go deeper with you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, decolonizing_Kiki. You can go to my website, decolonizingkikillc.com. And you'll be able to find all of my offerings there. I do tarot oracle card readings. I do virtual voice lessons. And I have recently launched a high vibe energy healing session where it's like a very multimodal session where we can dig into somatics and voice practices for you to connect deeper with your intuition and inner voice so that you can really start to embody that creative liberation that you've always desired. And then I also have a 6-month couple mentorship program for educators, creatives that are, like I said, in that kind of traditional realm and perhaps feeling really activated. And so this mentorship is really to help create a creative praxis so that you can embody your medicine before you make any decisions, because perhaps you don't even have to leave where you're at, but you just want to feel more whole and authentic in your everyday life. And so that's really for you. And with my educational background, I'm just like really calling in those educators that are feeling burnt out and like they don't have community or anyone to listen to them share their experience.
Thank you, Kiki. I love you, and I love every conversation, every new thing I get to learn about you. It's always like surprising and not at the same time. And I just love getting to witness you and your energy. So thank you.
Thank y'all. This has been so wonderful to connect with you and just keep that conversation going. Because like you said, there's always so much magic and fun when we get together. So thank you.
When is y'all's live again? Can you just repeat that so people can join if they want to?
It'll be this Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Central, 2 Eastern, and get on the Birth Realm email list. We're going to talk about more of Kiki's pregnancy and birth journey and preparation, as well as the Birth Realm itself.
Yes. Thank y'all for joining. We'll see you next week on Wednesday. We have
Next Wednesday, we have Tammy Visser, and Tammy is my high school friend who is a personal trainer and clinical therapist. Clinical therapist first, and her medicine is all around working and helping athletes get in touch with their spirit and somatics. These high-level people that are very into the physical thing, bringing them into the spiritual. So really excited for that. And then the week after that, we have Genevieve, who is a film director. So hit the bell if you haven't already. Follow us at With Soft Power on Instagram. If you would like to see the show sustain, buy us snacks, pay for our StreamYard subscription, then hit our coffee to make a donation, and subscribe to our Substack to catch all the past episodes in one place in our Sunday newsletter.
See y'all next week. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.